So hi ladies, I'm very excited to be here with you all today. We're going to be discussing the origin story of Sahiyo, an internationally recognized award-winning organization. I'm Jenny, the editorial coordinator at Sahiyo, and it's my honor to interview the incredible women who co-founded Sahiyo, United Against Female Genital Cutting. For those of you who don't know, Sahiyo's mission is to empower Asian communities to end female genital cutting and create positive social change through dialogue, education, and collaboration based on community involvement. Female genital cutting involves the partial or total removal of external female genitalia or other injury to the female genital organs for non-medical reasons. This occurs within 92 countries that we know of around the world, including the United States. So if each of you could introduce yourselves and describe your role at Sahiyo or what you do for the organization in your position, your current profession, and how they merge, if that's the case.
Who wants to go first? To Bombay or New York?
Insia, you started, you talked, so you have to go first.
All right. Hi, my name is Insia Dariwala and I am the co-founder of Sahiyo based out of Mumbai, India. And along with Aarefa, I take care of the day-to-day ground activities in India. And I am a filmmaker by profession. I'm a writer and a director. And yeah, I mean, I don't know whether my roles merge or not, overtly, but when I talk about storytelling and how that has been helping with whatever work we have done at Sahiyo, I would say yes, our roles have merged then, because I have always believed in the power of storytelling, and that's what we have been doing at Sahiyo. So I think on a day-to-day basis, when we plan our activities or whatever we are doing, storytelling is at the core of it all. So yes, in that sense, I would say our roles merge. But thank you for having me here, Jenny, and it's really an honor actually to be here with all of my Sahiyos, and it's just actually surreal that we are in our 5th year. So thank you.
Right.
Okay, I guess I'll go next because I'm the next on the Zoom window. But so my name is Aarefa Johari, and I'm also based in Mumbai, India. I am, one of the co-founders along with all of these wonderful ladies. And basically, I am a journalist by profession, and I have been working as a journalist for the past 11 years. I am also a survivor of this practice. So my kind of reasons for getting into this activism space were very personal to begin with. And, it was comforting to find a group of women who felt similarly. And I think in a way, kind of, just building Sahiyo, we've all played into our strengths, and we've, definitely I'd say in some cases, my work as journalist does merge with the work we do, because we do so much of storytelling, and our blog is a storytelling platform. And, I've kind of helped to curate it as well. And I led an investigation, a rather journalistic investigation in 2017, where we discovered that, FGC was happening in the southern Indian state of Kerala as well, which was not something people were aware of before. So yeah, in these kind of cases, definitely. And there's always new things to learn and new things to do at Sahiyo.
Great, thank you.
I'll go. I was looking at Priya. right. So hi, my name is Mariya. I'm also one of the co-founders along with these women, wonderful women. And I am based in the US, and I'm also the US Executive Director of Sahiyo US. And when I was in grad school for social work, I did a small study to understand why FGC happened in the Downey Bora community in the US. And then I wrote about that study in my own experience. And I can't remember if it was Priya or Aarefa, but one of you reached out because you read that article. And then I ended up speaking with, was it Priya? Because I kind of remember meeting you both at the same time. So like the details of that are a little fuzzy. But after speaking with them, and they were connected to Insia, then we all sort of just started building. And I don't think we really realized at the time we were doing storytelling or we were going to come to do storytelling, but all of our backgrounds just sort of went into that direction. And like I said, I'm a writer as well too, and that just was something that was always very interesting to me. And Insia and Priya are filmmakers, and then Aarefa is a journalist, and it was just all these different qualities that merged into the magical formula that is Sahiyo today. But yeah, it is amazing that it's 5 years later and we're here and we're talking about this.
Thank you. Priya?
Left. So yeah, my name is Priya Boswami. I'm one of the youngest Sahiyo co-founders, and I'm also the only one who's not from the community. And I'm so grateful for that because I've learned what it is to be an ally through my experience of co-founding Sahiyo with everyone else. And at some level, I've always felt like this practice happened to me as well. And I've always felt very passionate about it, for a lack of a better word. It was very fortuitous and very like a can't believe moment that something like that actually happened. We formed Sahiyo, even though we never met each other. Of course, I'd met Aarefa before, I'd met Insia before, I'd never met Mariya. And it was just unbelievable that some people can just connect over emails and form an organization like this and continue to, toil hard to create conversation on what is such a difficult subject anyway. Yeah, I would describe my Sahiyo experience as learning what it is to be an ally, and also learning how hard it is to actually create change on ground. I'm a filmmaker, but Sahiyo brought out the activist in me. And I'm sure a lot of people, all the Sahiyo founders would say the same. So yeah, that's me.
Okay, great. So Sahiyo's aims and objectives are not only to bring an end to female genital cutting, but also to enable a culture in which a woman or girl's body and female sexuality is not feared or suppressed, but embraced as normal. To recognize and emphasize the values of consent and a child or woman's right over her own body as well. And so Sahiyo began in 2015, as you mentioned, as a conversation between women who felt strongly about the ritual in the Bora community. So all of you had already been speaking out in your own ways against the practice. Would one of you like to explain what Sahiyo means, why you chose the name?
Yeah, I could do that. So Sahiyo basically is a Bora Gujarati word for female friends. It comes from a tradition that we have in the community, at least in the India side of the community, of having groups of having a group of maybe 8 or 9 friends of the same gender, meeting, forming a group called Sahiyos, and another word for it is menage. And so you have these groups that are formed often in childhood, and these friendships last through life, and people meet at taking turns like at different people's houses. So so it's kind of like an organized friends group, and some of them really take off, and it's like long lasting friendships. And this is what our group kind of felt like, that we for us as co-founders also to just come together as a group of women and try and make change in women's lives. And also it defines our approach to the community as well, you know, that we are here to engage through dialogue and friendship.
Can I just add one thing? Because since Aarefa said it's a tradition, at least in India, is that I had never heard of this word because I was born in the U.S. in the Mora community, and this was not something that I was familiar with or that I think happens very much in the U.S. at least. And once I learned this word, I loved it, but I also asked my mom, and she had her own group as well. And then over the years, as I've spoken to Bora women who are in the US but come from India or were raised in India, sometimes one of the things that attracted them to Sahiyo was that word because it kind of reminded them of their own experiences with their own group growing up. So I've learned a lot about that, but it was something I wasn't initially familiar with until Sahiyo came about.
Okay, cool. So I know we've touched on it a little bit, but if you guys could really explain how you met. How does this work since you're all in different
I think it begins with Priya.
Okay,
Yeah.
Priya, were you in Hong Kong at the time or in India or Germany?
I was in India.
Where in the world was Priya?
And I think Aarefa and I were shooting for something, and it was a grant which came by because of an earlier film that I made. And I remember speaking to Aarefa about this article that I wrote from this person who did not have her name anywhere on the internet, and did not had her name, sorry, but did not have her email anywhere. And lesser known fact about me is that I used to be a journalist, and I still am an investigative journalist. So, I mean, at heart. So I basically took it up as a challenge, and I brought it on me to find her, who she is. And I think the big deal about that article was it wasn't sensational, it was balanced, it was personal, and it was at the same time very, very rational. And I hadn't come across anything in my then 3-4 years of trying to skim through the internet. And Aarefa was there and Insia was there, and both of them had already in their own capacity taken on work on the practice. Aarefa was probably the first woman in India to come out on the subject. I'd shot with her before, but anonymously, and she came out for my film, and we were shooting her in person. And Insia was also making a film on the subject around then. So, like I said earlier, it was very, 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 chance happening. And I remember that first time we met Mariya, the person behind that article. It was a Skype call, and my very shoddy, desperate attempts at shooting a Skype call. And back then, of course, there wasn't a pandemic, and we didn't know how to hit the record button on a Skype call. So I was scrunched up with my camera in Aarefa's house, trying to shoot Mariya from all angles. And then I decided to drop it because it was really bad footage. But we stayed on, and I think then Aarefa and I had a brief encounter in Delhi. And I remember saying bye to Aarefa at the airport while she had whipped out a notepad. I don't think we've ever discussed this, Aarefa, but I remember you took out a notepad and you started writing, so an NGO and a question mark. And that was like way back. And then I don't know what happened. How did we actually come together? Who proposed the first Skype call? Was it Insia? Was it Mariya? Was it Aarefa? I'm not sure.
I could jump in there and kind of connect the dots. So it's very strange, I mean, the way they say that when the universe conspires, it does it in such an amazing way that whatever has to happen does happen. So I was working on a film on FGM, and I was in the process of doing my research, and I came across Aarefa's interview, and of course I wanted to get in touch with her, and she told me that there is somebody else that is working on this, and she gave me Priya's email address. and I wrote to Priya and never got a reply from Priya.
Wait,
And
I
I
have
was
a
like,
story there. Sorry. I have a story there. Just to add to my global, I was living in Cambodia when you wrote to my UN ID. So just
Excuses.
on the world map. Yeah, I remember that.
So because Priya never responded, I was like, all right, let me meet Aarefa in person, because I need to get to the bottom of this character. And I had kind of decided on what characters I wanted. And one of my characters in the film was a journalist. And I met Aarefa, and it was like we had met each other before in some life, possibly, because we just connected so beautifully. And we discussed everything at this coffee shop, and we had somebody else join us. And by the end of it, I think we made notes as well with question marks. How do we go about with it? And
yeah, we were about to go down a very different route, which I'm very glad we did.
we were supposed to go through a PIL and all of that, and I don't know, I guess good sense prevailed, and we instead decided to just kind of make a collective. But that's how I connected with Aarefa. That's how I connected with Priya. Eventually I did get to Priya because of Aarefa. We shot together, and then Mariya and myself, we connected while others were talking. So initially it was just Mariya. Mariya was a name for me. And then finally I saw her, and it just felt like, we all were meant to be together. I mean, it had to happen. So it was a really beautiful story, actually. And like Priya, I didn't know Priya was a journalist. Priya, I didn't know that about you, but good to know that. I am a closet investigative journalist. I always wanted to be one. And I think in my, space of doing documentary films, I did end up becoming investigative journalist many, many times. So yeah, that's, I guess, our connection, the common thread that ties us all.
Actually, all of our skills are sort of like overlapping. I mean, we do come from different walks of life and very, very different lived experiences. But one could say like Mariya and Aarefa are writers, Insia and me are filmmakers. I think.
But also, like, in a way, writers. I think we're all storytellers in a way.
Yeah. Also, I think
I'm a professional writer. I mean, I used to write for films and television. I still do. So I'm a writer and a director. Both.
There's also the social work aspect too. I know, like with Insia, she hasn't mentioned it yet, but she has another NGO that works on child abuse issues too, and so there is that like common thread of, caring. I guess.
Jenny, you'll have to set a timer because we can go on and on.
I did want to mention. Oh, go ahead, Jenny.
No, you go ahead.
I did want to mention one thing since Priya mentioned the article that I wrote. And one of the reasons I wrote that article was because at that time there were I couldn't find anything. I don't think I had learned of Priya yet. I'm not sure if I'm not sure if your film was already out or if I hadn't seen it yet or at that time, but I remember one of my motivations for writing that article was because I felt like anything that I found at the time, and I haven't mentioned this, but I also underwent the practice like Aarefa. But part of it was there was such a misconception that FGC only happens to, some communities in the world in certain conditions and to uneducated folks. And that just wasn't my experience at all in the Bora community and wasn't what I was finding when I was talking to people in my thesis too. So it felt really important to break those stereotypes. And so I wrote this article that was incorporating my story, but the stories of others, just really to kind of highlight the complexity of the issue. And so that was my main purpose there, and didn't know that it was going to lead to all of this, years later too, which I'm glad that it.
Yeah, that's a really great origin story. I'm glad that we finally got to the bottom of that because I've been wondering for a while. So how do you all stay connected? Because you're all in different parts of the world.
Different
Every online tool.
Yeah.
Every online tool.
For Aarefa and me, we are in the same place, but even so, we don't meet as often. But because we do so many activities together, we managed to even meet each other in the pandemic. So we get to to see, but I wish we could get to see Priya and Mariya as often also, it's kind of, in fact, now when we are sharing the stories, I just felt that, wow, we have really pulled off something so big, for the past 5 years this is what long distance relationships are made of.
Fun fact, we've only all met together one time.
And when was that?
2016, right?
2016, yeah.
Yeah, we did a retreat when we met too, which was nice. It was
Beautiful,
where did we go? I think it was Insia's suggestion to go there too.
We went to this resort called Manori Bell, and it was beautiful. And we played.
And
we played.
Yeah, we hashed out a lot of things about our organization too, in terms of what we wanted to do and move forward.
I think that's where our structure was, born, possibly, right? We kind of decided to operate in a certain way, and it was a very good place to have this structure being built in a beautiful, beautiful environment, and with good food, good singing, good dancing. I remember Priya's poetry over there.
I remember the beach walk.
Priya's poetry, yeah.
Yeah.
Fun memories, yes.
Yeah.
So when did it become apparent to you all that FGC was happening in many Asian communities and not just the Bora community?
Actually, you want to
go ahead?
Okay. I actually knew of it, I think, in my entire 20s because of this photographer called Stephanie Sinclair. And she's a photojournalist. And I mean, because I used to be a journalist, I used to kind of admire her. And my husband is a photographer, and I see them shoot. They are like, these really stealthy black cat animals, they go out there, shoot. So it was a world of a lot of, like, how to say, investigative photography that always sort of beckoned me. And I used to idealize Stephanie Sinclair's work until I started to shoot on the subject myself. And I realized that in a moment's decision, like when you put the camera, you decide how you're going to shoot the subject. And I realized how many times she compromised the subject. The person who was crying in pain, a child with a tear, her mother, the entire system. And the moment I was put in that position, and I realized that I'm never going to frame someone like this in my life, I realized how many times FGC has been misrepresented by photographers across the board. Where is the consent form from the victim? Where is the consent from anyone? Are you telling a story of betrayal? Do you realize that the child will grow up to see that image and find herself on a Nat Geo cover? So, I mean, I took a detour, but this is definitely, I feel for very passionately. The visual representation aspect of it. And I have been aware of it in my 20s. And I also have been aware of how grossly it is misrepresented, even the Asian communities, if that makes sense. Sorry to bring in the heat.
No, I think when we formed Sahiyo itself, we were quite aware that it's happening across the board in loads of Asian communities. And so we made it our mission statement that, now we would work not just in the Bora community, but in all Asian communities.
And I think one thing that was interesting, yes, I think we were aware of that, is that, excuse me, as our storytelling grew, we were seeing people reading our story, or from our blog. We have a lot of different forms of storytelling, but just from our blog alone, and we would get people emailing us and telling us that it was happening in this country or that country too. And so we were able to build more connections and learn about more instances of it happening. But I think, yes, we all knew that it was happening in other countries.
Well, it's interesting what you were saying, Priya, because Sahiyo, in essence, flips that script on its head. So by making the organization's main focus on storytelling, then you're giving those storytellers agency over their own story, which I think is really powerful and works really well.
And I think that was absolutely unanimous decision. I don't know how we arrived at it. It was unsaid. All of us in an instant knew that we are going to be ground up. We are going to be entirely a organization which gives agency to people. And I think that was an unsaid understanding. I don't know how we arrived at it. I think that's a good story to, I don't know, go back to as well.
I think probably all of our own personal experiences. I just know from my own experiences of working in other forms of gender-based violence and domestic violence, and I was lucky enough to come from organizations that really prioritize that too. And so that's what really led me into our organization being like, that needs to be, a commitment. But yes, I agree with you. I think we all came to it on our own.
Yeah, and I think like before we formed Sahiyo, Priya, Insia, Priya, and me, we were kind of at the verge of going down the litigation route, and we were very close to filing a petition in a court seeking a ban on this practice. And at some point, I think just all of us realized simultaneously that, just before we took that step, that this isn't the right thing to do. We need to work with the community first, and that a law can come in its own time, but the law is not going to bring the change that we need to be able to engage with the community, work with the community first, bring these stories out.
Right.
And so once
Also, I feel, sorry.
No, go
I
ahead.
feel all four of us, or five of us when we started actually, the core values were very aligned for all of us, and I think that made a very big difference. Like, I know for a fact that all of us here, empathy is a very big thing, and that has at least driven us all these years. And so when you talk about empathy and when you talk about this as a core value, then the first thing you do is you put yourself in somebody else's shoe, right? And that is possibly the reason why we decided to live by certain rules and not do what others were doing in this space. So we wanted to create a safe space. I mean, that's actually the operative word, the safe space that maybe didn't exist when others came out with their stories. And like Priya said, the visual representation, and not just of FGC, I think, or FGM, I think it with anything that is violent and sexual in nature, it's really out there in media in a very, very wrong way, especially now. I mean, we are seeing more of it. So we were extremely mindful of that, and I'm glad that we all were on the same page. It kind of saved us a lot of trouble, between each other. We were very well aligned there.
I don't remember the exact dates of when this happened, but when we were in India together, we hosted a workshop for the media around sensitive reporting on this issue. And I believe Priya had received a grant to help us organize that. And then one of the things that was created from it was a digital activism guide. Not digital activism guide, that's the wrong resource. It was media resource guide. But the reason I'm mentioning that and connected to what Insia said is that throughout the years, so many people have used that guide and referenced it and told us how helpful it was. And it's just been amazing to see that we can have that impact also in terms of not all media, but how some, media folks are talking about this issue too.
We are not cutting any eyes to Breitbart. That's okay. I think that's okay. We're fine. We'll survive.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask, once you started communicating with other community members, how were you received? What were some of the first thoughts about how you were received?
Mixed. It's like, I think maybe at some point we expected a lot of negativity, which we have received, but we also received, just so many people reaching out to us and kind of reminding us every day why we do what we do, that this is a space that people needed. They needed a platform to share and talk and to, speak out about something they've never revealed before. never shared with anyone before, made decisions that they never thought they would make with respect to, choosing not to cut their daughters. So, yeah, I mean, I think to begin with, I'd like to focus on the fact that, we do, this is why we do what we do, because every day we are reminded that there is a need.
I think also we were very prepared. We were actually mentally prepared that it was like going to war, right? We knew that when we are out there, we are going to be meeting with a lot of resistance. But I think the support, the kind of support that we got from within the community and from externally as well, that was very heartening for us, all of us actually, and it only encouraged us to do more, because we realized that there were people, there were a lot of people actually who wanted um, to have this kind of a space or a platform where they could come and talk about this issue. So I think we had created, and I want to say this on behalf of all of us here, that I say it with a lot of pride that we were the first to do something like that, and it wasn't an easy decision, but we still went ahead and just followed our conviction. So I'm very proud of all of us here. And, yeah.
I wanted to add, I definitely agree with that. But I think what is amazing to see is the stories have changed. And, Sahiyo, we pride ourselves on collecting stories from all different points of views in terms of this issue. And we recognize survivor stories are important, but it's also important to talk about stories from male participants or males who are connected to this issue, whether it's their mothers or their daughters or someone they know who have undergone this too. And then also women who have not been cut, who come from these communities. And we've had stories of mothers who have talked about not doing this to their daughter, breaking that cycle. And it's been really amazing to read those stories and really understand that change is happening. Change is slow, and I know a lot of people get impatient, and that's something that we've all encountered as well. But we are seeing that impact, and we are seeing, the ripple effect of storytelling in terms of how it does move us towards hopefully a world free of, female genital cutting too in the future.
And I just want to add like a very simple point to this, because, my identity as not a community member has been questioned and challenged several times, because the moment I speak about what I do, if the other person is not from the community, they feel like they have a free run with me to bash the community. And I have found myself in, even before Sahiyo was born, in homes of people shooting their stories. And I have never had a better time in my life in a stranger's house. And I say this with a certain, like a clean sweep. I understand, there are good people, bad people everywhere. But nobody has ever made me feel unwelcome. Nobody has ever, made me feel like I'm a Hindu girl. What am I doing? What are my motives? And it really, really saddens me from my personal experience to live and inhabit this atmosphere of Islamophobia. And I feel like if there is, the one thing I want to sort of like champion out within Sahiyo is that cut the crap. I mean, don't bring so much Islamophobia while we are talking about a cultural norm. Look into your own lives and see, what you can change within your own culture first. So, yeah.
Priya just reminded me of something. So one of the first pieces on our blog was actually written by Priya, and it was something, she wrote that to connect circumstances in our own upbringing. I think you were talking about like menstruation taboos, and really recognizing that dynamics in your, what you were brought up with, harmful practices, and how those harmful practices also occur in FGC amongst these communities too. But I really loved that piece because it really spoke to the larger idea of, bodily integrity too, and the agency to your own body. And I think that's one of the reasons, that's one of Sahiyo's aims too, is to really recognize that this is happening in a larger context too around gender equality.
And also in response to, the larger question you were asking, Jenny, of course, in addition to all the, positive responses we've got from the community, of course, we also get negative responses. We're not kind of glossing over them. We do, and I mean, we get trolled a lot. We get, people who share their stories on our platforms have gotten trolled, been kind of, subjected to humiliation, being forced to apologize to other members of the community, leaders of the community. So it's difficult, and
and there's been resistance from within the family also. I mean, I have had a few family members, just cut off from me. So it's very funny because uh, they have sent me message in my inbox on Messenger and given me all the choicest of words were used, and then they block me so that I can't respond. And there are people that I will not see possibly for some time, but yeah, there is resistance from even people that that you have grown up with. And then there are these surprise packages. Like, so last year, and I shared this with the girls, that I have cousins who are much older than me, and I'd gone. So we have a very big family, and I'd gone for one of my uncles that passed away, and I'd gone for the funeral, and all these cousins were there, the older cousins. So they are in their late 50s and all of them. And I think something very important was going on with Sahiyo at that time. I don't recall what was the event. This is last year, and they just pulled me close to them, and they said, we are so proud of you, and keep continuing and keep doing what you're doing. We cannot do that, or we cannot say it openly, but you go all out and do it. And it just gave me so much of strength, because that was not something. And ironically, one of that cousin's daughters only blocked me. So it was very actually. The mother was supporting, but the daughter, who's much younger than me, she's like in a late 20s, she's the one who had a problem with what we are doing. So it's tricky. Sometimes it goes both ways. The older people at times resist, and then there are younger people who also feel that they need to uphold a tradition and continue the legacy of FGC, I guess. I don't know.
Right.
I think sorry, just to add, because Insia was talking about this and the backlash, one thing, because we've all had these experiences and we know it happens, we're very sensitive to it with the people that we work with too, who take part in many of our projects and volunteers. And there have been times where we think of activism on the scale from private activism to public activism. And we recognize some people can't be public, meaning they can't use their name, but they support us. And we're very cognizant that, if they want to tell their story, they can do so in an anonymous way. And we've had instances where volunteers have initially been public or taking part in something, and then something happens with them and their family, some sort of backlash, and they, connect with us, and we try to work with them to remove their name or whatever we can to make it easier for them too. And it's just, I'm really happy that we do that as an organization, and that we recognize that that is a real challenge and a hurdle, and that we're very just responsive and sensitive to that need too.
Great. So in the beginning, how did you as an organization deal with the backlash? So I know, Mariya, you had a speaking event and there were people who showed up who were pro FGC.
Yeah, that wasn't fun. That was a few years ago, and it was, there's a project that we do called the Voices to End FGMC project, which is this digital storytelling workshop. And we have participants affected by FGC take part, and they get to create their own 2 to 3 minute videos. And I was doing a screening in Berkeley, California with Sahiyo hosted with 2 other organizations there. And we had shown all the videos, and then after that we did a panel discussion with me and 2 other speakers who worked in the domestic violence field. I was really trying at the time to bridge different forms of gender-based violence. And then I remember right when the panel started, a couple walked in, and they were from the Bora community because they were dressed in the traditional Bora clothing. I didn't know them personally, but I knew they came from that community, and I was immediately kind of caught off guard and just apprehensive because of other experiences. I was pretty sure they were there not to be supportive, but to kind of be, to heckle me a little bit. And I continued talking until one of them spoke up and then asked a question around like, well, I think one of the questions, like, where's the data that this is harmful? And like, do you know there's different FGCs? And then I remember that was the husband, and then the woman was just like, I'm a survivor, I haven't been affected, and I can't believe you would compare this to domestic violence. And it was just, responses and answers are quite, or backlash that I've heard before. It wasn't unusual to me what they were saying, but I froze. I didn't realize I was going to freeze like that too. And I remember just feeling flushed and I couldn't respond, but luckily my two panelists were able to respond very nicely. And then after that, they kind of headed off that couple so that the couple didn't talk to me. And some of the other participants actually kind of wanted to see if I was okay and everything. And I was very thankful for all of that support there. But it was just something that made me realize that you just never know how you're going to react, because I thought that I would be able to handle this, but it turns out I wasn't. And it was something that you can prepare for it, but you just never know how the backlash is going to affect you, whether it's emotionally, physically, psychosomatic, whatever it is. And that was a moment that was like a teaching moment for me, but also something that made me think about, if we have other people who are speaking about this on behalf of Sahiyo, what can we do to prepare them in case those situations happen too? So it was just something it was hard. And I actually wrote about it for Brown Girl magazine, because I was just like, I feel like it's important to talk about how even as advocates, activists, we've been doing work, but this affects us in different ways too, like on so many different levels. That was one experience. And I know the other girls have had experiences.
We have had some, Aarefa and I have had like this, so in 2017, December, actually, exactly 3 years ago, almost, we were invited and there was this huge event. It was one of the first that was happening in India, and it was hosted by one of India's finest journalists, Barkha Dutt, and the event was We the Women. And Sahiyo was being spotlighted over there. It was, we were the last panel for that day. And it was like entirely, there was media and there were a lot of people. And before that, when the teasers were up on social media, the Bori community had already engaged. The pro FGC people started heckling me and Barkha Dutt online as well. And so there was this slight, apprehension that we were going to be heckled when the event was live that day. And sure enough, we are on the podium. I am on the podium with two survivors. One was a very young girl and the other, mother of two children. And fair enough, while we were talking, suddenly from the audience, we have the secretary of the Pro FGC group get up and just negate whatever we were saying. And it became like so I did not really have to say much, because the audience itself by that time was so, I guess, charged up that they started engaging with them. So there were like 8 to 10 women, all were dressed in the traditional Bora, costume. I call it costume, but for a better word. And they were there prepared to kind of, verbally attack us. And they did attack in their own way. And as soon as the event was called off, because it started getting very heated up. So the panel discussions were, just happening. And then Barkha Dutt intervened and she was like, I think we need to shut this out. Let's finish it. And so we were talking about how, the practice is also done to suppress sexual desires of a woman. And while this whole argument was going on and everybody was getting out, it's a funny moment, and that's why I want to share it, because it is funny, ironical, all at the same time. And while I was getting down from the podium, I had this entire group coming towards me, like, really angry and upset. And then this one woman shouts out loud that, we have good sex. Okay. And then the whole stadium was silent. And I was like, good for you. And I hugged her. And when I hugged her, she just kind of melted and she was like, "Why are you all doing this? Why are you all doing this? Why are you all maligning the community?" And I'm like, "We are not maligning the community. We are just sharing our experiences. There are women who have not had good sex. So we are talking about that." And then I held her and she started walking with me. And she said, "We need to talk. We need to." And I was like, "Okay, fine. Let's meet up. We would love to engage. Let's have a proper discussion." So we did engage. In fact, we did engage lots after that. But unfortunately, for some reason, we never really met face to face. But we wanted to have a conversation and see what is it that they have as an argument. But yeah, I mean, when it comes to backlash, I got a lot of it. I remember I had been invited to give a TED talk, and it was at a very premier institute of India, which is called BITS Pilani in Rajasthan. And emails were sent to the organizing committee saying that she should not be talking on the stage, and if you allow her to speak, we will boycott your institute. So that was the threat that was given to them. But thankfully, they were very adamant. They said, "No, we want her to talk," and it happened. So yeah, it's been interesting. It's been a very challenging, adventurous journey. I think we have, all of us actually can write a film on this, or a book. I don't know. It will definitely go in our coffee table book.
Right. So can you detail exactly what you believe in all its complexity will end the practice of FGC? We have about 8 minutes left.
Hard work.
I know. Go ahead, Aarefa. You started off.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's I guess with any major social change or change in behaviors, change in mindsets, these are deep rooted. I mean, I'm just going to take this outside of FGC to like anything, whether we're talking about addressing patriarchy, this is a manifestation of patriarchy, or racism, or casteism, anything that you can have laws, you can have all sorts of things, but it's not people's mindsets will not change unless we do the hard work of education, raising awareness, and really just finding ways to help people see why what they're doing is why these practices, cultures, mindsets are regressive and harmful.
Can I go next? I have just one word to offer: dialogue. The power of dialogue.
Can you talk about the Mumkin app while I have you?
Oh, okay. We both should be talking, Aarefa, me, and
Go ahead.
Richard. Well, it's an app, and we are the technology behind it is artificial intelligence, and Aarefa and me have written the conversations, which all of you here right now on my screen have participated in, and helped us form the narrative. And the core of the app is, if someone uses a conversation partner, whether in real life or through an electronic medium of an app, that person might be in a position to shed some inhibition and gain confidence on the subject. Because in our journey so far, I think the biggest hurdle or challenge that we have encountered is that people find taking that first step the hardest. And they of course need role models, and all three of them, I would say, are very, very brave role models. To quote Harry Potter, it's always okay to be standing up to your enemies. It's hardest to stand up against your own friends and family. I'm just adding that. So yeah, I think role models help, but there's a very real need to have a conversation partner, and Mumkin app is just that. It's a conversation partner. It's a digital safe space. It's a technology. It's AI for good. And the more we have worked on this, the more we have realized how much of a paradox that really is. We hear of all kinds of, threatening dialogue out there on artificial intelligence. But trust me when I say that it can also be benign. It should totally be in safe, written and developed by safe hands. So yeah, that's, please feel free to add anything to it.
No, I think you've done it.
Yeah.
Okay, so go ahead.
Dialogue, the power of dialogue.
I just want to echo dialogue too, because like in everything we do, I think it's the idea that you're not going to create change necessarily with one conversation too. It's that continued dialogue, continued conversation, making sure that we're taking things out of the private sphere. So, you know, that the idea that this is something FGC is secretive or a woman's, you know, issue and you can't talk about it, like, you know, completely breaking that idea and making it a public issue so that we can talk about it and that it's okay, and taking the shame away from talking about it. I think that's incredibly important. So it's that ongoing conversation, and storytelling in all its forms helps to facilitate that ongoing conversation. So just really, dialogue is a wonderful word to use. And I do think that that's what leads to change.
I agree.
Okay.
I
So
think we all on the same plane over here when it comes to that.
See, that's how Sahiyo was formed.
Right.
We're just like, yeah, say something, and then we're like, it's brilliant. We agree.
Perfect. So for all of you, what has been your proudest moment since Sahiyo started?
Oh, wow, that's a good one.
That came from Laura.
Oh gosh.
I mean, I don't know, like every time someone comes and tells us that, you know, I've decided not to cut my daughter, I think that just makes the whole thing worth it.
Yeah.
And that's what makes everything just feel like, you know, we're making a difference in it.
Yeah.
I think so too. I think so. I think that's so true. I mean, so sometimes I think we lose sight of what, because we are in the doing process, right? So we lose sight of what all we have done so far. And I have to share this because it happened this evening. I'm on another group of change makers, and a common, factor for the Mumkin app, which is Kirti. She put a message saying that, you know, Sahiyo has done this app. And I was like, hey, that's my organization. And these girls are somebody I know, Aarefa and Priya. And it gave me so much happiness that it was like, you know, wow. I mean, we used to talk about all these things, and now it has happened, you know, it is already done. And so I think these are these very, we look at it as small milestones, but they actually are in the space of FGM and the conversation around it. These are very big milestones and achievements. And I think everybody has, like when I go out there and people tell me that, wow, your organization is doing so much good work. Nobody talks about FGM. And then there are people who are engaging with us on social media and wanting to connect and become volunteers and work with us. I think those are all proud moments. And finally, again, what Aarefa said, you know, whenever one mother comes and tells us, or one father comes and tells us that we're going to make sure that this does not happen to our daughter, I think that is, it's just a home run for us.
Yeah, I just want to add on to that. All of that is true. And just, I think how much Sahiyo has grown is amazing to me. That's something that I'm really proud of as well, in terms of not just our volunteers and our staff, but in terms of our supporters and people reaching out. And I think it's amazing every time we hear somebody say that this is not going to happen to someone they know, but also the way how we have helped support survivors too, because there is that recognition that there are survivors. Our goal is to ensure that this doesn't happen to future generations, but it's also, how do you support survivors? And it's just mind-blowing to me in terms of how much Sahiyo has grown in 5 years, because it doesn't 5 years isn't that long, but at the same time I'm like, wow, it's grown a lot.
Right. So I think we're going to be cut off shortly, unfortunately. And I just wanted to say I'm so glad that we've been able to meet virtually finally. And thank you all for being here. I'm honored to be part of your organization. So thank you for your amazing work. Thank you for everything you do.
Yeah.